YouTube screens. It is I, your homie. It's your friend. It's Kim Brown here, your Wednesday host of Status Coup News. I'd like to welcome everybody to the program. Thank you all so much for being here. Happy New Year. Yes, I still say Happy New Year. I will be saying actually Happy New Year to people that I have not seen in the new year, probably for at least the next month. I was watching an inane segment on local television here in DC, and they were saying that they don't like to wish Happy New Year's past like the first or second day. I said, well, who raised you people? Like, where did you come from? Have you no manners? You say Happy New Year to people until, if you have not greeted them in the new year, you say Happy New Year to them. I say through at least the month of January, or maybe we cut off February. Who can really say? But these are just my musings. So anyway, I'd like to welcome everybody to the program. Please come in, give the video a like, a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. If you have not already subscribed to Status Coup, please take a moment to do so. Even take additional moments to consider becoming a member of the channel, because you guys see, as I'm sure a lot of people do see, but the takes, mainstream news, just abysmal. Just absolutely, utterly abysmal and devoid of imagination, devoid of any serious lens of critical thinking. And trust you me, I do not consider myself, let's say, an intellectual, but god damn it, I'm an expert at being in this skin, in this gender, in this class, in this country. And I'm telling you, my opinions and takes are just as valid as any of those other schmucks on the actual television. But here we are on YouTube, where we have a little bit more flexibility. So it is imperative that you support channels like this here at Status Coup. The kind of reporting that you don't get from the MSNBCs and the CNNs and the mainstream outlets, basically. So please, if you want to support outlets that amplify the stories, the concerns, the movements of working people across the spectrum here in this country, Status Coup is a channel that you absolutely need to support. And we thank you guys for being here. So today's show, what we got going on? Hold on, big up to the chat. What's up, chat? Is there a name for the Status Coup chat, Colin?
The
Status
community.
Okay, lovely. The Status Community. I dig that. See, that's clever. What's up, Status Community? How are you guys doing out there? Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we've got a great show for you today. So part of the conversation that I want to get into later about the second half of the program has to do, obviously, with the devastating hit that we saw happen on Monday Night Football to Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills player who collapsed there on the field, suffered cardiac arrest, continues to be in intensive care even right now. The entire country is rallying around this young man, his survival first and foremostly, but his recovery ultimately. But what about all the players that the NFL simply consumes their body, consumes their minds with CTE, and discards them, to the extent that a lot of disabled players, they had to fight to get any sort of material recompense, some sort of pension support from the NFL. And the NFL is racist. It is ran like a plantation. And there's a lot of things that we need to discuss, considering this is America's, I believe, most profitable professional sport. Why do we consume such brutality in this way, and are comfortable with the products, the players who are overwhelmingly Black, just to be ate up and discarded? Whew. Deep topic. We're going to get into that with justice journalist and sports journalist ChuckModi. He's going to be joining us here a little bit later in the program to talk about some of those issues and how this incident with Damar Hamlin is not an isolated one, even for this season. Okay, Dolphins fans know what I'm talking about. So we'll get into that in just a bit. But the first thing I wanted to start off with is the mess. It is the mess on Capitol Hill. And I have to say, I'm not patriotic, so I find the mess entertaining. And I'm not necessarily rooting for or against anybody in the mess. I do just enjoy watching the mess. So the mess I'm speaking of is that we have a new Congress, right? But do we actually have a new Congress if no one has been sworn in? Do we even have a Congress right now? In the House, at least. Is anything going on? Well, the main thing that's going on is that the GOP, the House Republicans, are acting a fool, okay? And they are carrying on. And I have to say, everyone familiar with carrying on? Is everybody on the same page with what carrying on means? They are carrying on. And they carried on today in the House chamber as I guess minority leader. Is he still minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, until I guess he's majority leader. I don't know what the fuck he is, but he's not Speaker of the House. And that is for certain, because after 3 failed votes yesterday, they came back and voted again. And McCarthy was not able to secure the votes needed again. And I believe they voted again, or they were slated to vote for a 5th vote. Chat, Status Community, are you so apprised of the latest developments? Because I'm telling you, I kind of zoned out. I said, how many votes are they going to do? But you would actually think that the sky is literally falling if you are watching mainstream media. And let me say this. So about McCarthy, I don't give a fuck about Kevin McCarthy. Okay, let me be clear, because it's just, the NFL works next man up, right? The GOP House leadership works next dickhead up. It doesn't even really matter. If it's Jim Jordan, whoever it is, he's going to be a jerk. Whomever the next Speaker of the House is going to be coming from the Republican Party is going to be a grade A asshole. Make no mistake about that. However, the palace intrigue of all of this is very interesting. But let me play that Fox clip first, Colin. Let's play this clip from, I don't know these Fox News people's names. I don't know. Is it Douchey? What's the guy? What's the other? I don't know the Fox people's name, because truly they all just look like copies of each other. So one of the douche canoes over there at Fox News interviewed this Black Republican congressperson, I believe from Florida. Shocked me. I said, who is this dude? But he is apparently part of the Republican caucus there in the House. And this particular brother, Byron, Representative Byron, if I got his name right. Byron is his first name. Of course, naturally, I do not know his last name, but you guys will see. So anywho, this gentleman hopped on Fox News today because he was one of the 20 so-called defectors, so-called rebels. I love the terminology being used by the media. We're going to get into the way that this is being covered by the cable news outlets here in just a moment. But listen to what one of the Fox douches had to say. Is that misogynistic? I don't think so. Anyway, let's listen to this exchange, and the congressman is going to explain, or the congressman-elect, rather, is going to explain to the Fox News host why he changed his vote away from Kevin McCarthy and decided to throw his support behind Jim Jordan.
Congressman-elect Byron Donalds joins us now. Congressman, after watching the vote astoundingly and seeing 19 short, we saw you jump ship. First off, your mindset for doing that. What did you think would happen when you decided to go with Jim Jordan?
Well, a couple things. One, I'd signaled to people I would vote for Kevin on ballot 1. I was possible on a ballot 2. I made that vote. At that point, we were basically deadlocked, and it was pretty clear that he didn't have the votes. So my thoughts is, okay, if he doesn't have the votes, what are we going to do as a conference to either find someone who can get to 218 or at a minimum adjourn what we were doing, get off the floor so the needed negotiations can happen. I think that it was actually not in a good place for the Republican conference to stay on the House floor yesterday and continuously vote. Look, a lot of people back home are trying to figure out what's going on Capitol Hill. But what we are really having is a deliberative process about House leadership and about what is needed to get Washington back on track. For too long in the nation's capital, everybody has just gone along with the next wave of leadership. And that's not an anti-Kevin McCarthy statement. That is a statement about what a deliberative, open process means for the constitutional republic that is the United States of America.
I hate it when broken clocks are right twice a day. Here's the thing. the mainstream media is describing this as, disarray. It's so embarrassing. It's a humiliation. It's an historical anomaly that the majority party in the House has not been able to elect a speaker, thereby, engaging all the rest of the business of the Congress to commence for that particular term or whatever, right? I respect the shit though. Okay. I respect this. I do not respect these people. I do not respect whatever their motives are, nor do I respect what they stand for or their ideology or any of that. But I respect this carrying on. You guys understand what I mean by carrying on now, right? This is carrying on to drag out this process to extract whatever concessions they're trying to get from McCarthy. Again, people who are more plugged into the parliamentarian aspects of how this legislative chamber works are more equipped than I to explain to you about committee appointments and all that shit. I don't care about any of that. Okay. What I do care about is that to be obstinate and even to show how a very small but deliberate number of a caucus can come together and throw a monkey wrench for the majority and the leadership of the party is something that you would think that the squad, them being elected into Congress in recent years, isn't this kind of what we thought that the squad was going to DC to do? To unite as a block, be it big or small, but enough to put a spoke in the wheel of Democrats, and I can't call it progress, so I'm throwing up my air quotes if you can't see it. The air quotes are there in the progress, but for the Democratic agenda to force things like force the vote on Medicare for all, to do things that will force the party leadership and the House leadership, congressional leadership into advancing policies such as getting the federal minimum wage passed and raised to a thriving wage, not just $7.25 bullshit, or even $15 an hour now is outdated and not on par with the cost of living. Hey, wait, we got some super chats. Hey, Humorous, good to see you in here, man. Ooh, Humorous, he done wrote me a paragraph. Lord have mercy. Humorous, I appreciate you. He ran us some bucks. So they ran us some bucks. Humorous says, Kim, I find you quite intriguing. The way that you oh Jesus, I cannot even read this. The way that you interpret what goes on in the country. He said, I find you terse. Is that terse? Yes, I am terse and truthful. Is terse a compliment? I'm not sure. I'm unclear as to whether terse is a compliment there. And he said that you're ahead of hurting someone's feelings. Oh, and I'm not afraid to hurt anyone's feelings. Absolutely. Whose feelings would I hurt here, Humorous? Humorous. I am never afraid to hurt people's feelings who are in power. Okay. They need their feelings hurt more often. Okay. That's the problem. They don't get their feelings hurt enough. And I appreciate your super chat there. And thank you so much for your additional super chat. Humorous. I cannot be reading these paragraphs. I'm so sorry, baby. but let me move on. But thank you so much for supporting the channel. And thank you so much for your support there. But we thought that the squad was going to come here and do this. And I would imagine, like I said, for more mutually beneficial things for the Democratic Party's constituents than whatever these Republicans are motivations are. Actually, let me show another way in which the Republicans decided to carry on. We're clear on carrying on, right? Carry on today. Colin, let me get Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert. So on this, I believe, was the fourth vote for Speaker, the one that took place this morning. Lauren Boebert, she showed up. Of course she showed up, but she got on the microphone and said some things that engendered some boos from the crowd. The crowd did not appreciate, the crowd that is being the House chamber did not appreciate Representative Boebert's comments. Let's take a look at that.
Let's stop with the campaign smears and tactics to get people to turn against us, even having my favorite president call us and tell us we need to knock this off. I think it actually needs to be reversed. The president needs to tell Kevin McCarthy that, sir, you do not have the votes and it's time to withdraw. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Ooh. Now, Now, all those misogynistic conservative Congress members are not here for some broad, some dame to think that she can step to the microphone and tell President Trump what to do. Boo! They booed her. They booed her. They said, Lauren, no. This is the GOP, honey. You are still subservient to we, the men. Make no mistake about that. So they booed her for that. But she made an interesting point. I think that she, not interesting, I'm sorry, that's overstating it a bit. But she made a point that at this point, there is no support for McCarthy to be speaker, or at least not enough for him to get the votes. And the GOP is embarrassing themselves at this point. And let the media, the mainstream outlets, give a quick, semi-breathless synopsis on how much of a humiliation this is. Take a look. Sorry, Colin. I didn't mean to throw it to you too quick.
Sorry, I missed it. What was it? One more time?
I'm sorry. The media. My bad. The clips that we.
The clips. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Is this group of 5 people, and Patrick McHenry from North Carolina is, I think, maybe the smartest member of Congress that I've worked with, are looking at options as to negotiating with the troublemakers within the GOP conference, potentially Democrats, if it comes to that pass.
What kind of Congress will the next 2 years be? At some point, they'll come to a speaker. But if you could have a battle like this, and that 5 members, in effect, plus the others they've been able to bring on board, can cause so much trouble here, what does that mean for things like, I don't know, funding the government or any other piece of legislation?
If you're not going to change the minds of 20 people, or you're not going to change the minds of, 15 people,
Jeffries.
What's the next step here, Congressman?
Well, there's 2 prongs. I think he has to continue working with these 20 some odd folks. And hopefully over time they'll see that the 201, 202 people have just as much willpower as they do. We don't want to be held hostage by a small group.
I have some sympathy here for Kevin McCarthy, because I don't know to some extent whether or not a deal, we'll see ultimately if this is true or not, but could have been cut. As he's made concessions and they've been agreed to, we talk about goalposts moving, but the goalposts keep moving so much that we don't know whether or not this is a caucus that essentially is the nothing will ever be good enough caucus.
AOC actually voted for her at that time, and Republicans booed her on the House floor for doing so. But all of this sort of shows that while Pelosi was elected speaker at a time of these sort of left-wing rebels, that so-called squad never ended up being the threat to the Democratic Party that these right-wing rebels are ending up being to McCarthy and the larger Republican Party.
Give that fan a contract. Yeah, Shorty, she hit that one on the head right there. The squad was never a threat. The squad was never a threat. In fact, the squad was just more social media savvy, I would say, out of all of the prominent members of Congress, especially from the Democratic side. The squad was just more savvy. I mean, and Nancy Pelosi was smart enough to usurp some of their cool, right? As we saw from that Rolling Stone cover that Colin so cleverly used for today's show thumbnail. Like, you look at that cover. First of all, I shook my damn, throw that up, Colin. Look at that. I mean, it just makes you just shake your damn head. It's like, and no disrespect to anybody up there individually, but the whole scene is phony. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at everybody on the cover. Phony. And I believe members like Rashida Tlaib and even Ilhan Omar, like, I believe that they still hold a lot of the values. But the problem is, you cannot, just by the virtue of the squad being mostly non-white people, right? Exclusively, non-white people, but by and large, right? I mean, they just don't wield no power. You know what I'm saying? They don't have the same kind of political backing, historical privilege to exert that kind of power within that specific chamber. You know what I'm saying? Like, these 20 rebels in the Republican Party, Congressman elect there, Byron Donald. That's why I couldn't remember his name, because he got 2 first names, and I don't trust people with 2 first names, so I intentionally forgot his last name. But Byron Donald, Congressman elect there, I mean, he's an anomaly out of that those 20 so-called Republican rebels who refused to affirm Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker, right? The rest of them looks like it's white folks, right? And for some of them, I'm sure they are connected white folks, obviously, but they are moneyed white folks. They likely have a good amount of dark money, I'm sure, pushing behind them. They got juice that the squad just don't have, okay? And the squad thought that they could do something, but I think they were very quickly reminded. They didn't even have to be reminded by the likes of those on the right. They were put in check by people like Nancy Pelosi, like Steny Hoyer, like James Clyburn. You know, the squad got neutered. They had their balls handed to them, ladies too. The ladies had their balls handed to them by members of their own party leadership because they were too radical talking, too quick to advocate for policies that Democratic House leadership knew that would never fly or barely fly in the House and absolutely would go nowhere in the Senate. I mean, the gender, the privilege, the class dynamics do not compete between the squad and to what these, I guess they're going to call these 20 defectors something at some point, right? It's not the same. But so, I mean, we could try. I mean, we could still keep hope alive. But the things just fall apart under the scrutiny of class, privilege, power, race, and gender. I'm sorry. What was the other thing that I had to include with that? Oh, yes, really quickly. Because, so you see that the Republicans are struggling to get McCarthy elected. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, elected House Speaker. So Jim Jordan from Ohio, we know Jim Jordan, terrible reputation, allegedly, whilst he was an assistant wrestling coach at, was it Ohio State? Yes, when the coach there, the actual coach, reportedly abused dozens and dozens of male athletes. Jim Jordan allegedly had to have known something, but, you know, I guess his constituents just let that slide. They, you know, Ohio, I guess they don't care about people getting sexually assaulted, but I digress. So while the GOP is content to step over McCarthy and go immediately onto someone who was purported to perhaps been protecting a known sexual predator, the Democrats are reveling in their representational victory of electing the first ever party leader in the House who is black. And that's Hakeem Jeffries of New York City, I believe of Brooklyn. Brooklyn, is this your man's? Hakeem Jeffries. Now, Hakeem Jeffries has been pretty antagonistic, I think, to progressives and progressive policies, right? To me, he's one of those people that, you know, I remember, I think I've talked to you guys before about, you know, please, especially our non-black friends, don't get too excited. don't get too excited over the first, because I think politically left black people understand, those black people that are on the political left understand that the politics of that first ever African-American ever given some sort of political title or to reach some sort of political achievement is usually because they just fall in line with what the white power what the white power structure wants, right? Like, you know, I mean, we didn't elect, you know, Huey P. Newton as the first ever leader of the Democratic Party. No, Hakeem Jeffries. There we go. Hakeem is now in there. And I was trying to look at some things about Hakeem. I'm like, I know there's some things about Hakeem that I don't particularly care for. I don't know. I don't know. But the one thing that jumped out at me was a clip actually that I saw posted on Chuck Modiano's account some time ago. Chuck, you posted this and I said, oh boy. So I want us to take a look. This is going to be Hakeem Jeffries at a pro-Israel rally. Not recently. This was a few years ago. But Hakeem Jeffries, I want you guys to listen to what Hakeem Jeffries said. You've probably seen this if you're a big Twitter user. If you have not seen this, the quote that Hakeem Jeffries gives at the end is a very, very famous American quote. Yes, famous American quote. And let me see how astute your historical ears are for famous political quotes as we listen to this clip of Hakeem Jeffries at a pro-Israel rally. Let's take a look. Listen.
And then you had to deal with the first intifada, and Israel prevailed. And Israel had to deal with the second intifada, and Israel prevailed. And then missiles were flying in December of 2008, and Israel prevailed. And then missiles were flying in November of 2012, and Israel prevailed. And so I'm confident that when it's all said and done, we're going to stand together. Israel today, Israel tomorrow, Israel forever. God bless you.
Let me tell you guys something, okay? Please know that American politics are down bad. And not to say that they were ever up in any meaningful way, but you gotta be down bad when the one party on the right is trying to elect an alleged protector of sexual predators, right? And then the other party on the alleged left, which we know the left is not represented in the federal chamber, right? But when the other party leader from the left on the other side of the aisle is quoting segregationist George Wallace. George Wallace very famously stood up. Was this Mississippi or Alabama? I get my segregationist sometimes transposed. And he very famously said, segregation today, and segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. And I have to think that Hakeem Jeffries selecting that quote had to have been Freudian in some way, because Israel's an apartheid state. And look at this black man supporting apartheid. It's just like, sir, and using the segregationist quote to back up his points. It's embarrassing, okay? It is embarrassing. We have in the House chamber, that the place that is supposed to be the people's house, representative of the people, we have a black man in a position for the first time ever who very gladly and with his whole chest supports apartheid and segregation in Israel. And then on the other side, we have all these other schmucks who support all the other bad things that are absolutely harming people. Okay. Down bad, the American political system, y'all. I don't have a lot of confidence in it. I show up and vote, but I don't have a lot of confidence in it. So I'm not exactly sure where the House moves from here. I saw some speculation that potentially even Jeffries might be elected speaker. I am not really sure as to the specific kind of wranglings that are going to continue to go on, but I will say I'm here for the mess. I'm here for the disarray. I'm here for the first time in 100 years ever. Has this ever happened? Good, because this political system, these institutions need to be shook up. And I hate that it is this rabble of dickheads who stand firmly against everything that I support, right? I refuse to root for them because of who they are and what they represent. But I will say I support the carrying on. Continue to carry on. Continue to disrupt. Continue to make sure that things do not operate business as usual, because the system is already broken. So continue to break it, break it until it doesn't work anymore. Okay. That is what I hope the end result of all of this chicanery and intrigue that is going on among House Republicans down in DC. So thank you guys so much. Really quick, do me a favor, run us some thumbs up. Let me get on back to the chat here. I hope you guys are enjoying your new year so far. Please be safe, especially if you are in certain parts of the country, if you're experiencing extreme weather, which we all are. As glad as I am, I suppose, to not have to be seriously bundled up on January 4th, it does perplex me quite a bit at the temperatures that we are seeing and the stuff that we are seeing happening in Europe as well. So just wherever you are, just try to be aware, mindful of the changing weather conditions, and do what you can to keep yourself safe. So the next thing that I want to talk about, guys, has to do with the situation happening in the NFL as the country continues to pray for the young football player, the 24-year-old Buffalo Bills player, who on Monday Night Football suffered a cardiac arrest on the field in live television right there on in front of a crowd of many tens of thousands in Cincinnati. And the young Mr. Hamlin is still fighting for his life tonight. His family has released a statement indicating that while he has made some improvement, he is still very much in a very serious situation as it pertains to his own survival. He is not yet breathing on his own. He is still breathing with the assistance of a ventilator. And the report that I saw before I came on, doctors, I think at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, said that they are treating him. He's being treated while lying flat on his stomach. They're trying to clear the blood out of his lungs because he was receiving CPR, intense CPR, for an extended amount of time. And we know, CPR is meant to save your life, but it can do damage as well. So this young man's situation is still not 100% clear. And there's been a tremendous amount of outpouring, truly, because I really feel as though this particular incident really shook up the country, because America is football. Okay. In the 21st century, it's football. Maybe in the 20th century, maybe it was baseball. Maybe the latter part of the 20th century, basketball's wiggled in there to be number two, but it's football. Americans watch football, period, point blank. And the NFL is a juggernaut, not only of material wealth made up of a cabal of billionaires, but they are politically connected in this country. And really, who oversees the NFL? Nobody. But as a result, the NFL's, let me say something real quick. Actually, Colin, can you pop up Mr. Hamlin's GoFundMe, please? Because this kid, this 24-year-old young man, before suffering this injury on Monday Night Football, he had been raising money online to support his mom. I believe it's his mom's daycare, to support the kids there with presents. And he was only looking for $2,500. And since this incident happened, so far, as of now, it's probably higher, but $6.5 million has been raised to support this young man's foundation, or the toy drive that he wanted to do to support his mom's childcare and the clients there that they serve. So, but this really brings about a larger question, because this was not the first time that a young football player from the NFL has collapsed on the field in this way. And it brings up the larger questions about player safety and the ways in which this massive institution known as the National Football League, the ways in which they just consume the bodies of mostly African-American men. And after that, after their playing careers are over, they are left dealing with these lifetime of debilitating injuries and disabilities, and they're left with very little support. So joining us today, I would like to welcome, I'd like to say a good buddy.
Yes.
Justice journalist and sports reporter, a person who I believe navigates both lanes exceedingly well and stands at the intersection when it comes to covering these kinds of incidents and beyond. We're joined today with ChuckModi. Chuck, thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you. Welcome to Status Coup.
Kim, great to see you again. It's been a little bit, and just great to talk to you about anything. But there have been better circumstances, but we tend to get together when the circumstances aren't great, which seems like more often than not.
Well, and Chuck, the reason I call on you is because, you got good sense and you tend to get things correct, especially when it comes to race and class and how these things combine amongst each other when it comes to professional sports. And, talking about what's going on with number 3 for Buffalo, and not just him, but also, I'm going to mess this young man's name up. I'm so sorry. But the quarterback for the Dolphins, Tua Tagliavola. Is that right? No, it's not.
Tagliavola.
Okay, close enough. Thank you so much for that. And how so far, this season, Chuck, we have seen these kids collapse as a result of being hit with really just devastating effect with the young man from Miami, Tagliavola, suffering, I believe, 3 concussions this season. 2 of them is when he just got knocked out completely on the field, much to the horror of everybody watching. And people, I believe, Chuck, I feel like what happened on Monday Night Football just this week has kind of changed the conversation about the importance of this game over the health and safety of players. How are you reading this? Ooh.
Someone busts a knee. Somebody has. Am I coming through?
You weren't for a second. You was freestyling like Jigga Man, and we saw you. We saw you with the hands and everything, but we didn't hear you. So if you could take,
do you hear me now?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. If it happens one more time, let me know, Kim, and I'm just going to take this out and we'll do it a different way.
Okay.
And I'll make sure. But I think what's really important here is that it did capture the national attention. It did happen on Monday Night Football. It was unprecedented to some degree. There was a player who died in 1971 once before that I didn't even learn about till today, and it was cardiac arrest. But when these things happen, they're usually someone has a gruesome knee injury. If it's the worst we generally see is a paralysis on the field. That we've seen. But what we have not seen, I have never seen, is someone on the field need to be resuscitated through CPR to save their life. And that is somewhat new, besides that with this one case in 1971 that people don't know about. And the hit wasn't particularly a vicious hit and whatnot. And, you know, it's a dangerous game, and it shows that anything can happen, because the hit that we saw is a hit that we've seen thousands of times. But what I think you said something really important that I'd like to engage with you is you didn't just talk about what happened on the field and player safety, but you talked about what happens after a young person retires, after someone leaves the NFL, and what does that look like? And that's the real crime that goes even beyond his own life. So yeah, that's a conversation we need to have. So I'm glad you're engaging that.
Absolutely, because I mean, Chuck, you've written about this, and trust me, as somebody who is a disability rights advocate, I appreciate that kind of coverage, because, you know, I mean, there's a lot to be said about where NFL players come from in terms of their socioeconomic background when they begin, because a lot of people really don't have sympathy for these players once they leave the game, because they say, hey, you made all these millions of dollars, maybe you should have saved, maybe you should have invested. There's no reason why you should be, you know, so broke down and unable to care for yourself. But, you know, and that's a class conversation that we may not even be able to have. But talk about how players have had to really, really fight. And even the $1 billion, I believe NPR reported on that today about the settlement reached with the retired NFL players, or those who brought that class action suit against the NFL and were able to settle for $1 billion. But I said, that sounds kind of low relative to the amount of profits that NFL owners and the league have undoubtedly reaped off the labor of these football players.
That's right. And you know, you have to go back to the collective bargaining agreement from a few years ago and we spoke about it together at the time, and I appreciate that. But Eric Reed, who's most known outside of football for kneeling with Colin Kaepernick, but gets forgotten in those Colin Kaepernick discussions, he was also blackballed. And he came back for a minute, and then he was blackballed. But let's understand why. He was fighting almost single-handedly against the new collective bargaining agreement that is corrupt. And I will also say the players union, there's corruption within the leadership of the players union that overturned an executive committee vote to reject the CBA. So there's a lot of money in the NFL, and it infects the players union as well. So what happened was disability benefits were cut. Impacting 400 players. That's what Eric Reed was fighting most about. I'm of the opinion he's blackballed more for that because he was messing with the billions now in a very different way. So that's a very important conversation. And this is an extension of that conversation because DeMar Hamlin only has 2 years in the NFL. Okay. And you need 3 years to be vested to get retirement benefits. So that would be cut off to DeMar Hamlin. Now, we've heard some leadership in Troy Vincent say he will be taken care of. Well, if that's the case, and if there were to be some exception, it would be because DeMar Hamlin has the national attention. But then what about the bigger problem? What about the gangsterism of the NFL that leaves all of these players broken down, often concussed, bad knees, injuries, and needing medical care for the rest of their life, and less likely to be able to qualify for disability because they made that more stringent. And that's a real conversation. And I actually want to engage your point. You said, well, we don't have time to have a class conversation. I think we have to have, with the NFL, that class conversation too, because I will make the argument that the average NFL player, I'm not talking about the top 10 players who make gazillions, the average NFL player whose lifespan is 2.5 years, is like the regular lifespan of NFL player, is more like you and me than the multimillionaire who's set for life. And I think it's important that we have to make that argument for people who dismiss their lives, okay? Because when I have a bad day at work, I don't walk away with a concussion. I don't walk away and I can't walk. My brain's not so scrambled that I am putting things that should go in the oven in the freezer, stories that I hear from family members. So we have to engage that class conversation for some people who may not get it.
And let's talk also, Chuck, about truly, I mean, the exploitation of the health of these players while they are active in the league. And I'm thinking about Tua, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the scariest things that you could think of after seeing a quarterback or really any player get hit in the ways that he did, and for him to fall out not once, but I believe twice on the field. And I think one of the 3 concussions, or at least one instance this season, Chuck, correct me, but he was cleared to play, to resume playing by those on the sidelines who were supposed to be entrusted with protecting his health. What are these players truly? I know that the league has made, I guess, some efforts to put rules into place to try to make the game safer, but at the end of the day, it's you better get on out there and play.
Yeah, and in the culture within the game, all players know about that. There's a line within NFL circles: the best ability is availability. If you're not on that field, you're going to be gone quick. So people know, the marginal players know, and most players are marginal. Most players are replaceable. There's only a few on each team, really, who hit that level of, you might need me for a while. And outside, you get to a handful at most on each team. People have to understand there are 45 people on a team. The other 40, the majority make minimum wage. The majority of players make a minimum wage. And a minimum wage, so you say, oh, the million. But if your average career is 2 years or 2.5 years, and you've prepared for that career your whole life, well, you have to stretch out those 2 million over, 20, 30 years, and you have to think about it like that. So it is important to see, as I said earlier, that the players' lives are closer to our lives than the multimillionaires.
But also, Chuck, I mean, the players have to be protected against themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because the players understand that it's the next man up mentality. And if they're not out there, then someone is going to take their place. But and they want to go out hurt, concussed,
Yes.
And the NFL allows them to continue to basically grind their bodies into the ground. Like, I don't understand how these are not OSHA violations. Like, I don't see how players and people, workers basically, can be allowed to continue to play hurt. But I guess this is America. Everybody went to work with goddamn COVID. I should not be surprised.
That's right. I mean, you make a good point about the player mentality that has been grown since they're children. That you didn't get that good by not always wanting to be out there. Now, here's the thing. So in baseball, when a manager goes to the pitcher's mound, There's never a pitcher who wants to come out of the game. The pitcher, if you ask the pitcher, they would say 10 out of 10 times, no, I want to stay in the game. I can get this man out. And you have to have the better judgment of that manager. The manager says, give me the ball. We ain't negotiating here. Give me the ball. I see something different, and it's time for you to come out. It's your arm is tiring. Now multiply that by 100, and you're talking about the NFL. Because you're not talking about performance. You're talking about injury as well. And they want to get people on the field. So you brought up Tua earlier. It's a profit-driven league. They wanted Tua on the field. There's a narrative. He was going to be the star. Him and the new coach, Mike McDaniel, was the story. If you listen to their storyline, there were production meetings where they talked about them throughout the entire time. If you remove Tua from the game, you lose it. That was on a Thursday night, mind you. It wasn't on a Sunday. It was on a Thursday night. Amazon is a new network. They're trying to showcase themselves. So we're talking about billions of profit here. And going to the pitcher analogy, I think the most egregious thing that I saw, if you remember RG3 in his first year, Robert Griffin III, when he played for the Commanders.
I remember.
I am telling you, this man would be a Hall of Famer had he not injured. And why was he injured? He was out there hobbling on one leg in a playoff game, his rookie. His speed was critical to his success. And Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's father, the former coach of the Washington team, left him out there for dead, in my opinion. Saw him as a piece of meat, in my opinion. And when his leg buckled and his career symbolically buckled with it, he was stone cold on the sideline. And, you know, he looked like a coach who would stump for Trump and Bush, which is what he did. But he looked like that guy. And I use that example of Mike Shanahan because on one hand, he's stumping for Trump, and then he's quote unquote overseeing these black players. There's a connection between not caring about that black body and not caring about RG3 as a human being. And so I think that's what we see. That's football in itself. If you take the majority of owners, probably 90% of them, they're Trumpers, and many of them actively campaign for Trump, just to give you an idea of the chasm between ownership and player.
Oh, yes, because Chuck, you hit all the nails on the head. I love the fact that you referred to Shanahan as an overseer, because basically that's what he is. And you said the NFL is a profit-driven league, much like the institution of slavery. It was definitely a profit-driven league, trying to promote and utilize and exploit the labor and the prowess of black bodies, of African bodies. And the NFL is an iteration of exactly that. And the race dynamics and the power dynamics and the wealth dynamics of this just simply cannot be ignored here, Chuck. I mean, because most of the owners, as you mentioned, are white, overwhelmingly conservative, and the majority of the players are overwhelmingly black. And also with the whites is the coaches and the majority of the management and front office positions. And it's like it becomes more glaring to me every year when the NFL Combine comes on, where you have these college players that are vying to get drafted by these respective teams, and it looks like you have these well conditioned black men standing on like slave auctions, like they're checking their body parts and checking their teeth. I said, what in the hell is this? Every time I see the NFL Combine, it makes me so uncomfortable, Chuck. So I mean, this whole owner well-compensated slave dynamic is very real in the NFL, and in my opinion, and by the reporting that you've done, it contributes a lot to the way that the players are treated while they are active and definitely after they have finished playing.
I mean, certainly, and you know, it's nothing new. One of the most interesting, absurd comments I get in Twitter all the time is someone saying, how could these owners be racist? 70% of the players are black, right? I get this pretty regularly, and it's so silly. But what I tell people, if you want to get some history, if you go back to the late 1800s and the Kentucky Derby, well, the first Kentucky Derby, 13 of the 15 jockeys were black. And according to such logic, there was no racism back in the 1880s because of these jockeys and the love of diversity by all of the owners who own the horses.
Especially in Kentucky, right?
yeah, especially in Kentucky, exactly, which is a bastion of equality right now, of course. And so it's ridiculous. What is true is that if you have ability, the owner will see green. That's what is true. And so we have to make sure we understand this and not need a Donald Sterling audio tape to come up so we can hear the blatant racism on tape before we say, how can he hang out with these great black players and still be completely racist? If you need that tape, we have a problem.
Or I love Jerry Jones, right? Jerry Jones showed up to the North Little Rock High School just to see what was going on. He just showed up to the Klan rally to see what the other girls were doing.
Listen, he was a bystander. Jerry Jones was curious. He wanted to know what was going on, so he picked the side where he could get the best view. The funny thing is, in truth, the true story is he had direct instructions from his coach at the time not to do that, not to go there. And that doesn't get spoken about enough. But when I look at somebody like Jerry Jones going back over 50 years, it's not that you were going back over 50 years. It's that we could go back in the last 5 years and not see a whole lot of change. The same Jerry Jones who's never hired a black coach. The same Jerry Jones who told his players, if you stand with Kaepernick, if you support Kaepernick, you won't be on my team. He said that publicly. So, you know what? If you sound like that kid who's there in 1957, and I don't see a whole lot of change, you're going to be held accountable for that picture when you have made no growth whatsoever.
Well said there, Chuck. And lastly, before I let you go, the NFL has such an oversized presence, I believe, in American culture. Now, contrary to what some goofy Americans think, the football does not really extend far beyond our borders. I know the NFL is trying to get some traction over in Europe. I don't know if the Europeans are checking for American football, especially comparative to what we just saw this summer and the galvanization globally of the World Cup, right? Yeah. The NFL does not compare globally as a game. But when we look at the amount of power that this league wields, economically, locally, in local politics, I mean, the NFL, where they have stadiums and where they have franchises, they're shot callers where they are, to entice politicians with their own boxes at the stadiums and to get sweet legislation or any kind of fucking thing, right? I know, for example, M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens Stadium, the M&T Bank Stadium accidentally went into auction because the stadium had not paid the city water bill in a long time. And goofily, somebody was able to pick up on, this was years ago, you guys can Google it, but somebody was able to pick up on it and actually made a bid for M&T Bank Stadium. And then obviously that did not happen. But regardless, these are usurpers of public utility. They still, and I say still, they steal tax funds, tax subsidies that are helping billionaires to build stadiums, using public money to do that, exploiting the community for very cheap labor, displacing communities when it's time to build a new stadium. I'm thinking about Inglewood, California, SoFi Stadium. That's a black and brown area. They displaced so many people and gentrified it that it's probably not going to be black and brown for very much longer. Thanks, SoFi Stadium. But the NFL is a harmful entity by all intents and purposes, Chuck. And is it going to take seeing these kinds of very graphic injuries that happened to Tua and that happened to Darvin? Is it going to take that to sort of awake a new consciousness in Americans to make them understand? And I know I'm asking a lot here, but to make them understand that the NFL, as I guess entertaining as it can be to some, it's brutal and it does a detriment to the public good ultimately.
I mean, I hope so. I watch on Sunday and criticize on Monday. I mean, that's what I do, but I hope you're right. But that's just fair. So people have a context.
Yeah.
If you took the top 100 rated shows last year, the top 100, 75% of them are NFL games. 75 of the top 100. There's no close second. It's like the biggest gap in NBA and MLB. There's no close second. If 1 million people left tomorrow, they'd still be by far and away the biggest entity. And as such, they call the shots. And you mentioned the stadiums. You mentioned their welfare for billionaires, which is basically billionaires hold a team hostage. And they say, give me that public money. And if you don't give me that public money, we're going to jump ship. We're going to leave town. That's what we're going to do. So what these billionaires is they hold the city hostage and they make the taxpayers pay that tax. So this is like legal blackmail, which is awful. And I'll say this as a journalist, my real aha moment of just how powerful the NFL are to make something go away is the best journalist report, investigative report that I've seen came from Al Jazeera, and it was about Peyton Manning. It centered Peyton Manning. And they did a 9-month investigation, and they basically learned they charged Peyton Manning with using HGH during his off year. And I could actually almost defend that on medical reasons. He had a broken neck and all of that. But that's beside the point.
Older player.
He's an older player. And they said half the Green Bay Packers were using HGH, and it was explosive, and it was video, and it was undercover, and they had a dealer that you could go online and watch the 45-minute presentation, and it was the most damning presentation I ever seen, caught on video. And here's what happened. They showed it before the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning denied it, said that's a terrible report, and every journalist covering it fell in line. And it was so absurd that how they defended that. They said that the person who was secretly recorded knew who was secretly recorded for months and went along with it as a joke. That was the defense. And when I saw that the NFL would back Peyton Manning, but not just back Peyton Manning, but shut down the entire NFL media from having a real critique and writing articles, I said, wow, that is a powerful entity. And if they can do that, they can do anything.
Yes, and they will. And Chuck, before I let you go, I'm going to leave you with a prediction here, because you and I are, you are a New Yorker, now a Washingtonian. I guess.
Yes.
But anyway, Chuck, I'm telling you, Dan Snyder's not going to sell the team. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. I
don't think he will. But Dan Snyder could end up being an asset. Because Dan Snyder, there are rumors that Dan Snyder is the one who released that Jerry Jones picture.
Of course, it was him.
I can't substantiate it, but all of a sudden, it pops up, and he's spiteful enough that he might push out some dirt. That's the way we find about police. If a disgruntled police officer puts out dirt or accuses other officers, that's the best way to find out. I'm hoping Dan Snyder sticks around and gives us the dirt on the other owners, shows us the emails.
That is the class warfare between the billionaires I am here for. When I saw the report that Dan Snyder said that he has dirt on all the NFL owners and he's going to be leaking it, and then that picture from 1957 came out from Cherry, I said, of course that was Dan Snyder. Who else did it? So I can't wait to see the rest of the dirt he got on the rest of the owners. So yes, I hope he doesn't sell until he has released 30 more pieces of dirt on the remaining NFL owners. Listen, we have been joined today with justice journalist and sports journalist. He stands at the intersection of both, covering race, class, and inequity in society and within sport. We've been joined today with ChuckModi. Chuck, thank you so much for making time to join me today. I truly, truly appreciate it. It's really good to see you. I like your hat.
Yes, Kim, great to be here as always.
Thank you, Chuck. Take it easy, man.
You too.
Hey guys, so I closed my laptop, so maybe y'all left comments and I missed them. Let me, because I was getting distracted by all the things. But really quickly, I just want to thank you all so much for tuning in today. Every Wednesday, you can find me here on Status Coup. You can also find me over on Burn It Down with Kim Brown, Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Go over to my channel and take a look around, poke around, see what you like. And see what you like. And if you don't like, then go somewhere else. But the other place you come right here is Status Coup News. I'm here every Wednesday. Oh, shout out to Black Power Media. We do the Remix Morning Show there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Guys, I'd like to wish you again a happy new year. Keep watching this mess. Are we everybody clear on mess? Yes, we keep watching the mess happening in the House of Representatives because it is tantalizing and spliff worthy. Roll you a J and watch the vote and the recap. The vote number 5 for the House Speaker, and I will speak at you guys next Wednesday. Thank you so much to Jordan and Colin behind the scenes pressing the button. It was Zayna. Thank you, Zayna. Shout out to Zayna too. So y'all be easy. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.